at Benjamin Netanyahu's Twitter account just before he started making that speech, and he said, "Heading to the UN General Assembly to give my speech, I will refute the lies made against us and tell the world the truth about Israel." What was that truth, Sherwin?
Well, it's exactly the way I was going to start this conversation with you, Bakshi. I was going to quote that tweet. And the truth was, he is an attempt really to debunk the international community's Iran deal and basically to show the world that Iran is still intent on developing nuclear capabilities with the end goal of a nuclear weapon. And so he spoke for literally for about 40 minutes, but the first 25 minutes of that speech was entirely dedicated to debunking this deal, to showing Iran for what Israel sees it to be, and that is that it's still on course to develop a nuclear weapon. I'll just refer to some of what he said. He spent, as I mentioned, the first 25 minutes. He also said specifically to the General Assembly that whatever resolutions taken in this building or in capitals, Israel will do whatever it must do to defend our state and our people. And I think Benjamin Netanyahu, referring specifically to some of the musings and some of the maneuvers being undertaken by certain members of the Security Council, particularly a permanent member France and non-permanent member New Zealand, in terms of what they're calling a parameters resolution that would essentially set out a time frame, a roadmap for a return to negotiations with firm deadlines, and Israel has been dead against anything like this.
Sherwin, what about the issue of Palestine?
Well, he spoke very briefly about peace negotiations with Palestine. He certainly didn't mention anything about the raising of the Palestinian flag yesterday at the UN. He talked about how Palestinians should not walk away from peace. He directed his remarks at the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, saying, "I know it's not easy, but we owe it to our people to continue to try, because together, if we actually negotiate, we can do remarkable things for our people." So we heard a similar tone from Abbas yesterday, talking about how there needs to be a return to negotiations, but clearly there's still a huge trust deficit between these two peoples.
Did Netanyahu in any way try to heal the rift with the U.S.?
He basically said in one line that the relationship and the bond with the United States is unbreakable, and that's kind of what you hear from the United States diplomats and from Israeli diplomats, that this is their strongest ally in the world and nothing will break that relationship. But he did take a dig at the United Nations. He said that the UN should rid itself of its obsessive bashing of Israel. He spoke directly to the UN General Assembly that it had adopted some 20 resolutions against the state of Israel and compared it to the only one resolution it had adopted on the situation in Syria, and saying it was completely unfair to target Israel in the manner that the United Nations has done. He also said, and quote, "When will the UN check its anti-Israel slander at the door," unquote. So clearly taking a dig at the United Nations, but in one line saying that the bond with the United States remains firm.
That was our correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, coming to us live from New York, unpacking the speech or the address by Benjamin Netanyahu to the UN General Assembly.